Hi, this is Lethea with Farm View Creators. Today we're going to paint some of the mini barn quilts that insert into the frames. I'm just taking out some of the pieces. It gives it more dimension. On the log cabin one, I will leave all of those pieces. I'm going to set some aside, trying to keep the pieces halfway together. And then we are going to stain the three of the backgrounds with Van Dyke Brown antiquing gel and get those nice and dry. I love this antiquing gel. It just goes on so smooth and just looks so rich and beautiful. Again, giving those a good dry. Want to make sure they're nice and dry. The Van Dyke Antiquing Wax is a paint couture product. I'm currently obsessed with paint couture. Now I'm going to use some folk art crackling medium, making sure that I get it all over and evenly spread. Then I'm going to put that to the side since it needs an hour to dry. Get those on all three. Not sure what color I'm going to paint the backgrounds at this point, but I know that I want crackle. I love crackle. Now we're going to get going on the log cabin. I'm using Paint Couture paints, trying to do an ombre effect with the green and the blue, and then I want to add some dimension because I'm not taking out any of the pieces, using the Paint Couture crust texture. Here I'm kind of confusing myself, trying to figure out which pieces I want to crust, and then I'm using my finger to apply that. I don't know if that's the best way, but that's how it works for me. It is a little messy, and I probably use a little more than I should, but I just love texture. So I'm getting that nice and even as much as I can, and then kind of dabbing my finger over the top of it so that it will have some puckering, because I do not want it to be smooth. I want it to have valleys and peaks. And the goal is to have this done on every other row of the log cabin. I am trying to be careful not to have any of it hanging off the edges of the pieces because I want it to fit together nicely. I've used this a couple of times and I just really like it. I've tried some other products and you can mix this with paint, but I'm always afraid I'll mix too much and waste it. So I like to just pack it on as is and then get it nice and dry and go back over it with the paint. So I am using 3 shades of green and 3 shades of blue. They'll be listed in the description of this video. The blues are Abyss, Night Sky, and Admiral Blue. The greens are Vintage Moss, Autumn Sage, and Basil. Just giving one coat, thin at first, making sure I go with the grain. A couple of times I almost went against the grain, and then I checked myself because I knew that I would get fussed at by my sister-in-law. Love Jamie, and she has taught me that it just is better to go with the grain. It does make the paint go on more smoothly. Here I'm drying that crust, getting that first layer of paint good and dry. I'll come back and hit the crust every time I dry a layer of paint until I feel like it's pretty dry. So on that second layer, I always go a little thicker. I tend to go heavy-handed when I paint, and I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have any excess on the sides of the pieces because I want them to be able to lay flush with each other to fit on the backboard nicely. Because if it doesn't fit on the backboard, it's definitely not going to fit on inside the frame. Wasn't quite sure what color I wanted to do the centerpiece at this point. That's why I kind of left it there alone. Hitting the crust again and getting those pieces nice and dry. And then I decided I needed a third layer on the abyss, or is it night sky? That darkest color, sometimes your darkest and your lightest colors need a third coat. Then I decided I was going to use Deco Art buttermilk on that inner piece. It was going to match with my frame nicely that I've painted previously and distressed. Then I'm going to use sponge daubers to add my blues and my greens to the crusted pieces. It's easier for me to do it with a sponge dauber on the crust because it really gets down in those little places, the little crevices. And I was thinking that I would be able to get by with just one coat, and then I realized that there were a couple of spots where you could kind of see the white showing through. So I did go back and add a second coat, and I just love how it's turning out. These paint couture paints are just so rich and they're so smooth and they just go on so nicely. I'm seriously obsessed with them. Hitting them, getting them nice and dry before I do that second coat. Hitting that buttercream again from buttermilk. Getting that nice and dry. Third coat of that buttermilk. It just needs it sometimes. And then I'm going at my second coat on the crust. Trying to really make sure that there's no little white specks showing through. And sometimes I just try to go too fast and then I notice them later. I just love that blue. It's so beautiful. And as you can tell, I'm a messy crafter. My hands are messy. My workspace is messy. I actually do all my crafting at our kitchen table. Someday, maybe I'll have a craft room to myself. But not yet. So I'm kind of getting those out of the way so that I can move on to some of the others. And this is my first video, so I was out of frame a little bit, and I apologize. I wanted to put that one back together. It's the churn pattern because I wanted to see where I wanted my colors. I come in with that Admiral Blue again on the rectangles, and again, painting with the grain, always. And then on the triangles, I used the metallic paint. It's Slate Blue Luxe Metallic. It is gorgeous, y'all. After I painted it, I just kind of paused for a minute and just absorbed the gorgeousness of this color. I'm going to have to get me some more metallics. And then I decided I'd just go ahead and start on this spools. So I've set them up and I'm painting one of the center squares and one set of the sides in Admiral Blue and Basil and Autumn Sage. Autumn Sage reminds me of the folk art color Succulent that I also love. I'm moving into a new classroom, so I'm trying to stay within the same color palette with things because I want to decorate my classroom in a farmhouse theme. Then I'm going in with French Lilac, which is a folk art acrylic, just to add a fourth color. hitting all that with a dryer, making sure it's nice and dry. Again, I use very thin coats for the first layer, and then when I go back for the second coat, I go a little more heavy-handed, just trying to make sure everything's nice and smooth and not getting any build up on the edges of those pieces, because they do need to sit flush. If you do have buildup, you can always go in with a little sander and take care of that. But I try to prevent that as much as I can. So just hitting that with another layer. Then I'm going to try to get some of my colors out of the way that I don't think I'm going to use on any of the last pieces. The Ohio Star will be last. So in this kit you have the log cabin, the Ohio Star, the churn, and the spools. It is a great little kit. All of them come together. They are from the Rust Covered Cottage by Christina. I adore her kits. I am an affiliate, so I will have a link in the comments that will take you directly to this kit. I'm hoping to get the frame that will hold all 4 of these in the same frame, because I think it's just going to look so pretty. That's another reason why I try to stay within the same colors so that they can be displayed all together. So on the Ohio Star, I decided that I wanted to use that metallic slate blue on the inside, and then the right beside that is going to be the French lilac, and then the basil on the points of the Ohio Star. Again, painting with the grain and making sure that I don't have any build up on the edges. And then hitting it with a thicker second coat. If you haven't checked out Christina's kits, they are amazing. You definitely need to visit the website. Kind of obsessed with those two. Just going back with that heavier second coat. And then hitting it good with a dryer. I want to get them nice and dry because that's all the pieces. And we're back to our backgrounds, the 3 that we put the crackling medium on. You have to make sure they're nice and dry. And then I'm working very quickly, trying to get that background covered before it starts crackling. It's not even, and I'm okay with that. I love the crackle medium because it's unpredictable. I went with buttermilk on the first 2, and then the autumn sage on the third. And you can see that they are not evenly coated, and that's okay. I was laughing as I was doing this because all the best crackle was underneath the spaces where I was going to put the pieces back on. Then I kind of bumped my buttermilk against my sage green. Had to do a little cleanup there, but it worked out. Then I noticed that I did have a lot of buildup on that top edge, so I went ahead and took care of that because I did not want it to dry that way at all. And then I'm hitting it. You can tell on the bottom left one how you can see that crackle. And I mean, I really thought that I was using the same amount of product on all 3 of these, but the crackle is so different in every single one of them. And I did kind of get a clump of buttermilk on that spools, but it's okay because I'm going to make sure that I put a spool over. And now I'm going to spend a lot of time just going around and distressing. On the littler pieces, I will just distress around the edges. On those larger squares and triangles, I will kind of hit the inside of them. And on those crusted pieces, I will hit the tops and peaks of the crust just to give it a little more dimension. I just love how it looks when it looks a little old, a little distressed, and it just gives it something. It's just my jam. So I'm hitting all the pieces from all of the mini kit, all of the 4 barn quilts. And I reload anytime I feel like my dark wax is getting a little thin. I am using Debbie's DIY dark wax and just a stenciling brush that I got from Amazon. I did not pay much at all. It came in a set of 4. I think it was under $5. I've had it for a while. I don't ever wash it or rinse it. I have had to kind of wipe it with a baby wipe before when I tried to distress something that was not completely dry. So I learned my lesson there. I probably should put it in a Ziploc bag or something just to keep it from drying out, but I have not started doing that yet. I keep thinking about it and then I forget. It's the mom brain. Being a mom of teenagers is not for the faint of heart. Especially boys. They give me a run for my money. I'm hitting the edges where I can tell that I'm going to have the pieces and the background will show. On the spools, I could not remember where things were going to show, so I just decided to distress around all of the edges of the pieces, and that way I had it all covered. And then I kind of, on the autumn sage, got it a little thick, so I decided to kind of wipe it back, and that is a-okay. Now I am laying out my pieces because I want to make sure that I like how it looks before I glue anything down. Here I'm trying to make sure that my inner pieces and my spools are kind of in a spiral pattern with how they're laid out. And then I'm going in, and I just love that two-tone look of the Admiral Blue and the metallic slate. And then, oh my goodness, this log cabin, y'all. My mama would love this. She loves greens and blues, and she has quilted so many log cabin quilts. And then I love the Ohio Star. I've actually painted them on a couple of cutting boards for a friend to give her sisters for Christmas, and they turned out so pretty. You can take out the pieces that I painted pink in that Ohio Star, but I decided I wanted another color. Then I'm going to go in with Dead Flat from Paint Couture and then Art Glitter Glue. And then here's the finished product. Thanks for watching.